The compact super mini class is an exceptionally competitive one, and that means that there's a huge amount of choice for buyers out there. Things like the Ford Fiesta certainly rise to the top in road tester reviews, but what about the Citroen C3? It's been freshly facelifted, and we're here to find out what's new and whether it's worthy of your consideration. The updated 2020 cars receive new LED lights and slightly reprofiled bumpers and wheel arches. Something that remains is the C3's love of customisation and personalisation. As well as quite an interesting colour palette, you can have it in various two-tone combinations. You can change the colour of inserts on the bumpers, the mirror caps, the rather unique air bumps that run down the side. You can pick and choose tones for all of these that equate to 97 different exterior colour combinations. And with this specific car being a Shine Plus model, it also gets some really smart 17-inch diamond cut alloy wheels. The interior is just as interesting as the exterior. Curious patterned surfaces and luggage strap door handles certainly piques interest. This car's also been specified with a faux wood trim, which really elevates the cabin to a more mature status. The really comfy fabric and leather seats wouldn't look out of place in a modern art installation. The C3 comes with a 7-inch touchscreen infotainment system, and it's okay. It's reasonably responsive, but I have to say the system is a bit menu-centric. The good news is that you can plug in your phone and use Apple CarPlay and Android Auto at no extra cost. But overall, the front of the cabin is just an interesting place to sit and makes other rivals look rather boring. In the rear, space is best described as adequate, with legroom being average and headroom being much the same. It's fair to say that the large windows prevent the back feeling claustrophobic. Open the hatch to reveal a boot that's larger than that of the Ford Fiesta or Peugeot 208 at 300 litres. However, there is a notable load lip to overcome when loading. This particular Citroen C3 is equipped with a 1.5 litre 4-cylinder diesel engine with about 99 brake horsepower and a strong 250 Newton meters of torque. And yeah, it's a great workhorse engine. If you need something with the mechanical muscle to make good overtakes, cruise on the motorway, or actually because the torque comes in at very low revs, it's pretty good around town as well, it feels like a good strong motor to have. Diesel might not be the most favourable at the moment, but if you're still doing big miles in your car, it makes a lot of sense in terms of economy. And actually, some of the latest diesel engines are some of the cleanest engines on the market at the moment. Citroen claims that this motor will return 65 miles to the gallon, and from the testing over the past week or so, I'd definitely say that's attainable. It is a really good engine option, but what's a little bit disappointing is perhaps its lack of refinement. I've experienced this 1.5 litre engine in various other Citroens and Peugeots, and they seem to be a little bit more muted and a little bit more isolated under the bonnet. This one, it's quite noisy, especially at idle, and there's a vibration that comes through the steering wheel and the pedals. And yeah, it's just a bit of a shame. Diesel engines have come an awful long way. Something else that's a bit of a disappointment in the C3 is the manual transmission in this car. The 5-speed manual is fine, but it just has a really sort of loose, imprecise feel to it, and it tends to be a trait of, I suppose, French cars at large. I don't know whether it's the home market that rathers quite a lazy shift, but the lack of precision in this just makes it feel a bit baggy, to be honest. I mean, look, that's in 5th gear and it's got so much play in it. Yeah, I mean, the ratios are fine. It's quite long-legged. I don't find myself missing a 6th gear. At 70 on the motorway, you're turning at about 2,000 RPM. So actually, it's not too bad in that regard. I just wish that it was a more precise shift. But the real strength of the C3 is comfort, and that's the direction that Citroen's going in these days. They want quirky, interesting design, lots of customization, but also to be the most comfortable vehicle in the class. And whilst us motoring journalists and enthusiasts crave a keen handling chassis, you know, the vast majority of the car buying public couldn't care. They don't care that a car's got supreme body control. They don't care that it's got a really nose positive attitude into apexes. What they want is a comfortable means of getting from point A to point B. My mum isn't going to be setting lap times around Silverstone anytime soon. She'd far rather have something that's a comfortable means of getting to the shops. And Citroen know this, and that is what this car is gauged towards. It is far from the best handling car in the class, there is too much body roll, there is not enough feedback through the steering, and the pedals have a slightly squidgy consistency to them. There's no connection going on here between man and machine, but what it does do very, very well is separate you from the condition of the road beneath you. A lot of Citroens have been employing these new hydraulic bump stops in their suspension that sort of takes the worst out of the suspension travel, and it works really well. Even on this car with 17-inch alloy wheels, it still has a decent profile of tyre on it, and it just soaks up some of the road imperfections that you hit. You know, we're travelling along at 50 mile an hour here, and the road is choppy and far from the best quality of tarmac, and yet the body's level. We've got a nice base level of comfort here, and that's just what it displays over multiple surfaces. Even the worst potholes are damped really, really well, and Citroen need to be commended for that. They haven't gone in for the headline grabbing, oh, you know, it's the finest driver's car. What this could be is one of the finest cars to get you to Tesco's and back. I know I've already given brief mention to these seats earlier, but in terms of comfort, they are great. They're not very good for holding you in place if you decided to tackle a twisting B road, but again, maintaining that new Citroen ethos, they're so comfortable. They're like big, soft armchairs that you sit in. I mean, this one even has a deployable armrest should you choose it, though it does sort of get in the way of the gear lever, I have to say. But generally speaking, yeah, these are lovely, and they're not just full of sponge, they're full of a very special damping foam. Citroen actually sees this as almost part of the suspension component, because whilst the car's suspension absorbs the shock, any remainder that comes into the cabin is sort of further absorbed by the cushioning effect of these seats. And it's great, I really do like them. Now, this specific Citroen C3 is actually my long-term test car, and that means that I keep it for a longer period of time than the typical sort of 1 week that we usually have to test other cars. And that means I get to know a bit better, and it also means that I clock hundreds of motorway miles in this car on a regular basis. And when I was first thinking, oh, you know, a C-segment car, even with a more long-legged diesel engine, it's not really ideal, is it? I would much rather have a bigger, more comfortable motorway cruiser, but I have to say, this car is truly commendable in how comfortable it is. It's Citroen, instead of trying to capture headlines or make something sound overly appealing in a brochure or a lifestyle magazine, have actually dialed in on things that matter to people who buy the car. And I think it's time that we all sort of recognise that not everybody wants the most enthralling car to drive. Comfort is a higher priority to the majority of people. Considering that Citroen aren't dashing for the Traffic Light Grand Prix award or trophies for handling, the C3 actually acquits itself really well. If you're after a Super Mini that's comfortable, practical and well priced, it's definitely worthy of going on your shortlist. Head to yesauto.com for the latest car news and reviews, and don't forget to check us out on social media. We're in all the usual places such as Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Simply search for Yes Auto.